You're listening to Designing the 21st Century. The Nakashima Foundation for Peace maintains the architecture and furniture collection which American architect and woodworker George Nakashima created in New Hope, Pennsylvania. It's one of the most personal and magical places in America. It's a powerful representation of Nakashima's personal and design vision and of his life story. Now that the foundation has a special mission to preserve the family home, a national historic landmark recognized for its innovative design and craftsmanship, I've invited Nakashima's daughter Mira, now the creative director of the George Nakashima Woodworker, to learn about the legacy of her father, about the greatness of his design, and about the plan to restore the house. Nakashima built it in the 40s and it reflects his philosophy about integrating modernism with traditional Japanese principles and his vision regarding woodworking and craftsmanship. Today, the family house urgently needs help. Thanks to grants from the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, the foundation has a comprehensive preservation plan that outlines the work needed to stabilize this important historical house. Hi, Mira, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. You know, this is not the first time we speak.
Oh, I know. We've seen each other many times over many years.
I don't know if
in many places.
Yes, in few places, few countries.
Yes.
I don't know if you know that, but your father had an enormous impact on my life and on my career. Because when I was 25, I came to see him. And it was the first time that I saw anything Japanese like that. And that really inspired me to develop a taste for everything Japanese. But your father was an American, and there is a lot of American identity in his work. What was Japanese and what was American?
You're asking me to take that apart? I don't know. I grew up with, obviously I grew up with my father, and I didn't know that my house or my culture or my parents were any different from anybody else's. I grew up in an American school with American friends, and I did know that I looked a little different. People teased me sometimes, but I didn't realize what the Japanese culture was until I graduated from college. I had studied some Japanese language and history when I was in college, but I didn't get to Japan until after I graduated in 1963. And bless her heart, my godmother took me on an Alan Watts tour of Japan, and it was based on Zen Buddhism in different places and the effect that it had on different temples and tea houses and just the general culture in Japan. And that was like an eye-opener. It's just like this whole piece of my being that I didn't know was there. And I've been sort of building on that introduction ever since.
Your parents spoke English at home?
Yes, they did.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, my grandmother, thinking that I understood Japanese, would speak to me like half Japanese and half English. And it was funny, if we had guests over, she would, and they were Japanese and understood Japanese, she would speak to them entirely in English. If we had a group of American people who did not understand Japanese, she would speak entirely in Japanese to them, so nobody understood what she was saying.
Your father was an architect, trained architect, who made a decision to become a woodworker and to make furniture. And he made fantastic furniture, but one of his most iconic pieces is the konoid chair. And you also have a building called Konoid in New Hope, what is the word conoid?
The etymology of the word means that it's derived from a section of a cone. And it's a little confusing because the roof of the conoid studio was designed before the chair came to be. And the roof of the conoid studio was based on a conoidal form. It's round at one end and flat at the other and has all these curves to keep the strength and the thickness of the shell, which is only 2.5 inches thick. So that was the original inspiration, and within that space, he created this two-legged wooden chair, which was called the conoid chair, and he had a lot of criticism. He said, the people on the outside said, you can't build a two-legged wooden chair. It'll break, and people will sue you up and down. You just can't do this. And Dad, being an architect, knew the strength of materials and the principles of cantilevers, and so he went on building them. It was our best-selling chair, and we're still building them.
You're saying architect. I think that a piece of what makes your father's furniture so great is the architectural thinking. And when you look at this piece of furniture, you know that they were made by an architect. It's very, very clear. And what I wanted to ask you is, he went to Japan as an architect. What exactly did he learn in Japan? He was fond of the philosophy of Yanagi, and what else did he bring from Japan to America and practiced?
Well, in the beginning, he got. I guess I should start from his youth. He was a Boy Scout, and he grew up in the Pacific Northwest and developed this tremendous appreciation and love of nature and of trees in particular. And he majored in forestry for 2 years at University of Washington, and decided that architecture would probably be a better profession to have when he graduated. So he switched to architecture, did so well in architecture. He had a natural talent for drawing and for designing, and he got a scholarship to Harvard, and then he got a scholarship to the École des Beaux-Arts in Fontainebleau. And he might have practiced, except he graduated from MIT in 1930 when there weren't any jobs available. And he did mural painting for a while, and then decided the best thing to do would be to sell his car and buy a steamship ticket around the world. So that's what he did. And so he bummed around Paris for quite a while, and then he went on to Japan, and his father said, I think it's time you got a real job. So he got a job with Antonin Raymond, who was employing, he brought modern architecture basically to Japan, and he had employed a lot of American and European architects who were well-versed in steel and concrete technology, which hadn't come to Japan at the time. So Dad joined them, and he had some wonderful colleagues to work with. And Raymond did some wooden structures around Tokyo, which my father helped with. And then he got this commission to build a reinforced concrete building in India. And nobody had done that before. So he needed an architect on site, and Dad volunteered to go. And that's how he got to India, and how he became immersed in the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo and reinforced concrete technology.
And it was, well, in 1942, your family, yourself, you were a baby, and your parents were taken from your home to a camp. And when you were released from the camp, you went to live in Europe. But I read that the family house, was not the first thing he built on the property.
That's true. He built the workshop first because he knew he needed to make furniture to earn a living. We lived in a tent while Dad built it.
You lived in a tent?
Yes.
For how long?
Oh, I think a year. During the cold winter months, my mother had the wisdom to take me to California to visit her father, who was ailing. And so we spent a few months in California during that first winter, but
And then he built a family house.
Well, he built it, yes,
And you grew up
entirely
in
with
this
his own
house,
hands in his spare time, which is why it wasn't finished for a while.
which is unbelievable. I mean, he built it by himself, and he had to make living making furniture and living in New Hope. This is like extraordinary thinking about it. So you grew up in this house.
Yes, I did.
And what makes this house special in the legacy of George Nakashima?
Well, I think it's really important that he built it himself. I mean, literally, he poured the concrete tiles for the roof himself. He did the masonry for the stone wall. He did all the plumbing and the electric, which had to be replaced later, but he did them initially. He built the walls. The wood structure he was very familiar with because he'd worked with Raymond in Japan, and he knew how to build, but he'd build it little by little. I mean, the first room was the house when we first moved in. And we moved into the house before it even had a floor. I mean, I remember having picnics on the bare rafters underneath or I guess they don't call them purlins, underneath the floor, because that was the house. And that was our very first house that we ever had. We lived in an apartment in Seattle, and then we were in camp in the barracks, and then we were in a third floor room on the Raymond farm, and then we lived in this little cottage that we rented down the road from where we are now. And then finally Dad got his own little piece of land and built his own house.
And then he built also other structures on the properties.
Yeah,
How
he kept on
many
building.
structures altogether?
I think there are about 14.
14.
Yeah, but the house was the second. The first was the workshop. The second was the house.
And the house. So what happened to the house? Why the house needs help today?
It's old. All of us, when we get old, need repair.
Absolutely. Tell me about it.
Oh, also, it was built on a very short budget. He just built it as he could. It didn't have a central heating system. We didn't have money to drill a well, so we had a cistern and collect rainwater for washing. I guess we must have had electric because we had a pump. In our first house, I remember having a hand pump, but I don't remember having a hand pump in the new house.
And so you got some kind of plan on what to do with the house.
Oh yes, thank goodness. University of Pennsylvania, took it very seriously as a research project, and it was wonderful. They had this laser scanning device that could precisely find the points on the house and create a drawing from them. And so they recreated not only just the general architectural drawing, but they created the different layers that were built over time on the house too, which was fascinating. And all this stuff that you couldn't even see anymore was they could pinpoint all of those rafters and beams and measure the distance and all that stuff. It was
So
it was amazing.
what do you raise right now to make it complete?
What do we need? Mostly a heating system and a way of controlling the humidity. There was no humidity control. There was no central heating in the beginning. It had forced air. We have sort of a University of Pennsylvania has also done a campus-wide plan in order to wean us off fossil fuels, and everything that right now is still running on fossil fuels. So that has an oil tank, it has forced air heat, which is terribly inefficient, doesn't have, Dad couldn't afford to insulate anything, so there's no insulation. When my brother was living there, they sprayed some awful foam insulation underneath, and that needs to be redone. And
Is it furnished?
oh yeah, it's totally furnished. It's kind of eerie. I walk in there, and it's the same way it always was when I was living there as a kid.
I want you to tell our audience something about what's happening today at the workshop and how you carry your father's legacy into what you're doing today.
Well, let me see. I came back I went to college in 1959, and I went to Japan in 1963, and I got married and had a child, and then we came back to the U.S. in 1966, and then we lived in Pittsburgh for a while, and then um, my father announced that he'd bought a parcel of land across the road from where he lived, and he was building me a house. Would I like to come home in 1970? And it was an offer we couldn't refuse. So we came home in 1970. I had 3 children in tow, and I was able to work part-time with my father. So that was just kind of convenient. And my first job was helping my mother in the office, which wasn't much fun. But if I got done my office work, I got to work in the shop, and that was worth doing the office work. And then
55 years ago.
Yes, good math. Yes, exactly.
And you know what? Your father did something very authentic. His ideas about furniture came from a deep philosophy, not just of the Minge movement from Japan, but also about his connection to historical American furniture. And there was a whole agenda that he built, and the furniture reflects that. But today you see that there is a lot of derivative of your father's authentic language, and it's everywhere. You just open the door of, I see you laughing, you just open the door of any furniture store anywhere in the world and you see it there, but it's really not that, because it lacks the eye, it lacks the architecture, it lacks the thinking. What do you think about that?
You're right on. Thank goodness that you also understand that. I think some people don't. They think, well, you got a piece of freeform slab, and that makes it Nakashima. It's more complicated than that. And the reason he used the freeform slabs is he said he was a Japanese druid. Of course, he respected the natural forms from his Japanese heritage, but just instinctively he respected it. When he started out in the 40s, people were doing free-form coffee tables and things, but they were man-made forms. And Dad, because he had a connection with the sawmills, I think it was an economic necessity in the beginning. He would go to the sawmill and he'd take the offcuts. If you cut a round tree, and they would usually quarter saw it, so it was straight and it would stay flat. And then there would be offcuts that they would throw away. And so Dad probably got those for a really good price, and that's how he started his business. And he realized that these offcuts with their natural edges were beautiful. They were more beautiful. When I first went out to the Southwest, I looked at all those mountains and all those colors and all the bluffs, and I thought, why do painters even try to paint stuff? Nature made it more beautiful than any of us could think of doing. And it's kind of that way with a tree.
And he called his book, and he called after these pieces of wood that you say, he called it the soul of the tree, because the tree had a soul, and the wood has to reflect the lifetime and the life story of the tree. And I think that's a hugely inspiring thinking of wood.
Yes, it really is, because I think in the U.S., before that time, it was just a material, and you just used it to shape it to whatever you wanted. And Dad respected the fact that this wood had a life of its own.
The people who come today to the studio to commission furniture from you, are they connected to your father's legacy in a way? Can you?
That's a tough question. I think some people are and some people are not so much. some people think we have an infinite supply of wood or something, and since the COVID shutdown, we've do a lot of images and communication through the internet, which we didn't do before that. So often when we get a client request, we will go out and, if they narrow it down enough, we will go out into the lumber storage and select some pieces of wood that we think would suit their project, and then we photograph them and send them to them. And some people will say, well, yes, I like that, or I don't like that, or can I come and see it myself? And now that COVID's over, people do come and see the wood themselves. And it's different when you actually see a full plank of wood in front of you than seeing just a picture.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And there is a myth, I have to ask you, going around, that all the wood that you have, enormous amount of wood, was all acquired by your father.
Most of it was. We have, after my father passed, he had this really precious relationship with a lumber broker their name was Thompson Mahogany in Philadelphia. And the story is that Dad went in the early 40s and he asked them if they had East Indian rosewood or teak, and they looked like him like he had 3 heads. They said, no, we can't sell that. It's too expensive. And they looked at Dad in his dirty overalls and wondered why he's asking for this expensive wood. But they said they were importing veneer logs, and some of the logs weren't good enough to make veneer, so they didn't know what to do with them. And Dad said, well, I would be happy to take them from you if you let me saw them through and through. That means you have free edges on both sides. It doesn't stay as flat as if you quarter saw it. But the Thompsons I guess they were glad to get rid of those logs, and they processed my father's lumber, and through his entire lifetime, they would air dry it and they would kiln dry it, and they deliver it, and were very good to him. And as soon as my father passed away, they said, you got to get this stuff out of our yard. It's taking up way too much space in Philadelphia. So we had to build our own storage.
Yes. Mira, so if our audience would like to help in bringing the family house to life and to do what needed to be done, well, how can they do that?
Well, we have a website that is nakashimafoundation.org, and there is a button, I think this is fairly... If you look at all the pictures first, there's a little button that says, if you want to donate, please donate here. And I think that's the best way.
So the nakashimafoundation.org is where I encourage everyone to go and to help to bring the Nakashima's family house to life and to help to restore it. Mira, thanks for being here. It's always such a pleasure. It's like a family already. I met you so many years ago. So thanks for coming to New York.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is Daniela Ohad. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Designing the 21st Century.